Donald Trump continues to make the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny about himself.
But not about the man who killed him. Not about Vladimir Putin. He refuses still to condemn Vladimir Putin.
Who poisoned him once, and it didn't work. And finally, he killed him. In a recorded town hall that aired on Fox News last night, Trump was asked about the money he now owes after being found liable for massive fraud in New York State. And he said that was a, quote, form of Navalny. Trump did call the opposition leader, quote, very brave while answering a separate question, but again failed to condemn Russian President Vladimir Putin, who most believe to be behind Navalny's death. Take a look.
Even if you appeal, you got to put up escrow money. That's it's a lot of dough.
It is a form of Navalny. It is a form of communism or fascism. Navalny is a very sad situation, and he's very brave. He was a very brave guy. It's a horrible thing, but it's happening in our country, too. We are turning into a communist country in many ways, and if you look at it, I'm the leading candidate. I get indicted. I never heard of being indicted before.
It's such a lie. It's
disgusting.
It's such a lie on every single level. A form of Navalny, communism, a guy that lies to banks, a guy that lies to creditors, a guy that lies to everybody about his property holdings. Listen, that would get any of us thrown in jail. That would get you thrown in jail if you did that. Or that would get you, if not thrown in jail, that would get you fined. And so he's been doing this for decades. People in Manhattan have been saying he's been doing this for decades. And so finally, if there is a form of sort of Putinism in America, which, of course, it's so funny. He didn't say Putinism. He didn't bring up Vladimir Putin. But I think the most un-American thing that's happened to Donald Trump through the decades is he always gets away with it. He is Rollo Tomassi. If you saw L.A. Confidential, he's the guy that always gets away with it. And we don't know. Maybe he's going to get away with it again. Maybe we know that's what this run for the presidency is. We said it in 2019. I said it in 2019. I said if Donald Trump loses, he's going to run again. And he's going to run again if for no other reason to avoid all of the criminal actions that are going to be coming against him. The ones that we saw even before January 6th. Communism. I wonder, are the people in that crowd, and I think we have to start asking this of our fellow Americans, are the people in that crowd really stupid enough to believe that if justice finally comes to one shyster, that somehow condemns America and makes it a, quote, communist nation, when actually American capitalism is stronger today than ever before? Let me just say that again.
I don't want to believe
American capitalism is stronger than ever before. We are crushing Chinese communism. I know they're really stupid people in Congress. They go, these communists. They throw that word around, having absolutely no idea what that means, no idea what Marxism means. They just like anybody they're opposed to is either a pedophile or a Marxist. That shows you, again, how bankrupt intellectually, how bankrupt philosophically, how bankrupt spiritually the Republican Party is. They attack our military. They say it's weak. They say it's pathetic. When our men and women in uniform are stronger now, relative to the rest of the world, than any time since the end of World War II. And American capitalism blowing away not only our allies, but also all of our rivals. I just got to keep saying it. Donald Trump loves Russia so much he should move there. If he moved there, he'd hate it. Tucker Carlson, why don't you move there? If you love Russia, if it's so great, if it's a land of paradise. I mean, these are the lies. This is the BS we used to hear from Soviet leaders. coming to the United States and talking on Larry King about what a worker's paradise. Go to the worker's paradise. Has a lower GDP than the state of Texas. California, this place that everybody says is the worst place. Oh, it's so horrible. California, communist state. California has the fourth largest GDP in the world. In the world. In the world. In the world. I want to bring in Heilman in a second, but I want to go to Caddy K. Caddy, when you have these idiot Republicans talking about how weak America's military is, how weak America's economy is, how Americans are communists, I think of my limited time going across the world, talking to leaders in the Middle East, talking to the leaders in Europe, talking to leaders around the world. I will tell you, over the past several years, I've not had one say, you know what the problem is with America? You all are too weak. No, what they say is, you're trouncing us economically, you're trouncing us militarily, and we don't appreciate it. They say it in different words, sometimes much harsher. I can't even repeat what one leader of a major European country said to me about what the United States was doing to them, but it was colorful. And it was about our strong economy. We're rolling over the rest of the world, and instead of celebrating America's strength, Republicans are attacking it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I have had this conversation many times, Joe. Look at the state of the U.S. economy at the moment compared to all other industrialized economies in the world. And it's not just the state of communist California that's doing so well. It is the United States writ large. Growth is higher. Inflation is lower. Unemployment is lower. This, you know, in global terms, this is a rocket ship. You read it. I read it, too. Jared Baker's article about the state of Russia and the state of the United States, saying how absurd it is to compare Russia to the United States at the moment. He makes a very funny comment at the beginning in a kind of spoof saying, yeah, that's because there are so many immigrants queuing up to get into Russia at the moment. At least they don't have an immigration problem because millions of people are not trying to get there. Where do people want to send their kids to university? It's here in the United States. Where do people want to come into this country to work? It's here in the United States. None of that is true of Russia. I mean, Joe Biden, you may not like Joe Biden if you're a Republican. You may not like the expansion of government. You may not like the CHIPS Act. You may not like the Inflation Reduction Act. You may not like the spending that has gone on during this administration. If you are a fiscal conservative, you may have concerns about it. But to say that, you know, Joe Biden locks up his political enemies, or if you're a journalist, you get thrown into jail if you report critical things of this administration, or that the Justice Department is warped one way or the other, it's ridiculous. I mean, there is clearly no comparison.
Insanity. Yeah, it's absolute insanity. The thing is, even if you're a small government conservative, you can't be rooting for Donald Trump to come in, because Donald Trump in 4 years raised the national debt more than any other president in American history.
Yeah.
More than any president in American history, even two-term Democratic presidents didn't raise the national debt more than Donald Trump did in one 4-year term.
But if you're a Republican voter looking at the Republicans in Congress right now, they're the ones holding up aid to Ukraine.
Right.
Aid to Ukraine.
And Israel.
To ward off Russian aggression. And you would think that would help ward off Russian aggression, while Donald Trump is Russian aggression in the form of a useful idiot.
Well, you've got money going to Israel to help them in their fight against Hamas. You've got money going to Gaza to help with the humanitarian crisis. You've got money going to Russia or to Ukraine to help in their fight against Russia. And you've got money going to Taiwan to help in their fight against communist China. And it's the House Republicans. Yeah. It's the House Republicans that are standing. It's Mike Johnson who is standing in the way of us helping our allies in Ukraine, in Israel, and
he could be
and in Taiwan.
A hero if he wanted, but that's
no,
not what they do.
He doesn't want to do that.